More on the U.S. China trade fight. Let's bring in our guest, Melanie Hart, Center for American Progress, Director of China Policy, and Anna Ashton with the U.S. China Business Council. Melanie, where do you stand on? I hear sort of the same thing from a lot of people that maybe come from your side of things, and that is that, yeah, China has done some things in the past, but we should be addressing it through TPP, or we should be addressing it through our allies, and that we're doing it the wrong way. But then again, you got Schumer saying stay tough. So where are you on this, Melanie?
Look, we can be tough with China without holding a gun to our own heads and forcing American consumers to pay, American households to pay up to $1,000 a year to cover these Trump tariffs. We can be tough standing together with other countries that share our trade concerns, our IPR concerns, our industrial policy concerns with China. And the G7 is exactly the kind of forum where the U.S. should be bringing other leaders together on this issue. And unfortunately, we see President Trump just driving everyone apart.
Anna, I mean, we've tried stuff in the past, obviously. Do you think it was finally time for tougher action, i.e. tariffs, or this confrontation we have?
I think that the entire business community wanted to see more productive talks than the talks that we had been having under previous administrations. But the entire business community also said right from the start, tariffs are not the appropriate tool for addressing things like intellectual property protection, tech transfer, subsidies to state-owned enterprises, and that tariffs are ultimately going to do more damage to us than help us resolve this conflict. And that's what we're seeing. The tariffs have really hijacked the talks.
If we eventually arrive at some type of deal, the one that we were talking about in April that does address IP and does address state-owned enterprises, things like that, the only thing that got us there, Anna, would have been the tariffs. So if we finally get something that is favorable, would you still say that it wasn't worth it to do it?
I think if we finally got something that was favorable, if the tariffs turned out to really work to bring China to the table and make the changes that were needed, then we would have to, of course, concede that, okay, tariffs worked, but to what extent that they work and at what cost? And I think now we're starting to see the costs really pile up. And are those costs worth it?
And you're talking about what? Where are we starting to see it?
Well, I mean, we've got tariffs on almost every single thing that we import from China coming into place by the end of the year. That affects all sorts of business commodities that are used to manufacture final goods. It hurts the ability to manufacture in the United States for China. It hurts the ability to manufacture in China for the United States. We're going to see those costs trickle down to consumers in every sector of the retail market, from school supplies and school clothes to toys for Christmas and electronics. This is going to hurt everyone.
Going to, but we really haven't seen necessarily the evidence yet, as evidenced by how strong the consumer is. The low inflation number, the Walmart report, the Target report, even the stock market, we're off maybe 3 or 4%. So, I mean, the worst case scenario could still come to pass, but I was just wondering what evidence you were talking about right now, because frankly, it hasn't been nearly as bad as what the doomsayers. Do you have a comment, Mohammed?
Yeah, I was just going to ask both Anna and Melanie. While I agree with you that getting Europe on board early on may have been a better strategy, if you are aiming for a regime change that is going to change behaviors that have been entrenched for such a long time in China, and you're looking forward to the next 3 to 5 years, is there a way to do it without disrupting the existing equilibrium? I just don't see it. I agree that it would have been better to have Europe on board, but we would still have had this seeming break in the existing relationship.
Are we aiming for a regime change? Is that what's happening? Because that kind of makes sense. This use of extremely aggressive
to be clear,
policies.
No, I'm talking about a trade regime change with respect to intellectual property, to respect to forced transfers of technology. So a trade regime change, the notion of we have to level the playing field at some point.
Well, one problem that we have to talk about is the fact that as everything that I understand about the deal the administration was negotiating with China is that it doesn't actually address our fundamental problems with China. It didn't, as I understood, go into the weeds on industrial policy. It focused more on trying to get China to throw a couple $2 billion our way and do some big purchase deals that would run only for the next 5 to 6 years through a potential second Trump term, and not in any way focus on the things that make the U.S. stronger over the longer term and able to compete against China and have a level playing field. That is where we have a complete failure here.
But if that's the case, why didn't China just concede early on? If it's a couple of billions here or there, why not just concede early on rather than get involved in a trade fight that hurts its economy?
Yeah, well, the ironic thing is
that
we have a situation where we're trying to get China to spend, a few $1 billion on products that it was buying before. And the only reason that it stopped buying things like American soybeans is because this whole situation was approached with tariffs as the main tool. Tariffs have hijacked American agriculture. Tariffs have hijacked farmers' ability to do their jobs and to sell their crops. And so now we're in a situation where the president's unorthodox trade ideology is being placed ahead of economic realities. And, he's asking business to sacrifice themselves at that altar. He's asking consumers to sacrifice themselves at that altar. And he also asked that of farmers, and farmers did it. And now for 2 years, we've been bailing them out. Taxpayer dollars have been bailing them out because they can't sell their crops. So far, we've spent $28 billion on that. How many billions of dollars of crops does China need to buy to make up for the fact that we've had to subsidize farmers who wouldn't have had to be subsidized otherwise? That doesn't sound like a plan that's working.
Well, we didn't invent the tariffs, that's for sure. And if we get to a point where where we don't have tariffs and some tariffs that have been slapped, as we always like to say, slapped on us over the years, if those go away, then maybe we can, get something out of all this. Anyway, Melanie, Anna, thank you. Lucky we didn't have anyone from the other side. We have to do that ourselves, I guess, when we just book people that are basically echoing each other. But anyway, we appreciate it. Thank you.